You're listening to the Urban Come Up Podcast. Each week on the Urban Come Up Podcast, you'll hear how our guests were challenged and turned their challenges into success. And now, here's your host, Janora McDuffie.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special two-part edition of the Urban Come Up Podcast. It is called Dads on Dads, and I am surrounded by three very successful fathers. And we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of what makes them successful as fathers and as businessmen and their own journeys from their childhood, maybe or maybe not having fathers in their lives. So it's going to be a good show, so strap up, we're about to go. First off, we have Tyrone Jackson. He is an entrepreneur and father of...
two daughters.
Yes. Welcome to the show.
Thank
Tyrone
you.
is also known as the wealthy investor.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Nice to be here, by the way.
Also, we've got Victor Rogers. He is an entrepreneur, starter of the DB Labs, and father of...
son Israel, daughter Kennedy.
All right.
Yeah.
And last but definitely not least, we've got Randy Hernandez, another successful entrepreneur in real estate and the restaurant business. And he is the father
of five. I have Zachary, Jaden, Anastasia, and I have two 6-year-old twins, Isabella and Valentina.
Oh, wow.
That's
so
right.
you
That's
are
wild.
busy. So
Yeah,
thank
quite
you
busy.
for taking the
Thank you.
time.
He really is the entrepreneur.
Yes.
It's good.
All right. Well, first off, talk to us, each of you, a little bit about what makes you successful at what you do. We'll start with you, Tyrone.
There's always a lot of things that makes somebody successful, but I recognize I am not the smartest person in the room, and I just hang out with other people who are smarter than me. Like, that is like the foundation of my success, I believe. I have a lot of great ideas, and then I find people who can execute them, and I treat them well, and then I listen to them. So motivation is a great skill, to be highly motivated, but to find people who can carry that out and help you achieve that vision, that's a skill. And right now, I'm using that skill a lot.
All right. What about you over there, Victor?
For me, it's learning a skill, falling in love with the skill, and then finding a way to help benefit others with the skill. And so that's what brought me to where I am today.
Okay. And Randy?
Well, I think, to go with Tyrone, I think that was part of me at a really young age. I saw with my own eyes of where it was better to be. And it's funny, I tell all of my kids today, even my youngest ones, there's always a day to learn. Every day, there's something to learn. What can you take today and what you learned? And I always took that upon myself at a young age as well to what can I learn today from someone who knows more than me? And that goes for everybody. So that's my philosophy till this day. I use that every day, like what can I learn today? Who can teach me something I don't know, to kind of be at the feet of someone and really kind of look up to them and learn and take something from that.
All very wise. Now, it sounds like, though, or you're here to talk about being fathers, but let's talk about your own journey growing up and the fathers that may or may have not been in your lives. Tell me about how it was growing up for you, Tyrone.
Well, I'm really interested in this topic because I was reading in Black Enterprise magazine that 1 out of 4 African-American males have been in prison, incarcerated. But I was really more interested in the 3 guys who didn't go to prison. Like, how did that happen? What were they doing?
Okay.
Because I'm not interested in going to jail.
Right.
So the thing for me is I had a very non-traditional family background where my father would come over and spend time with us on the weekend, and then he would go back to where he lived, and my parents were never married. And that was sort of kind of normal for me. But before that pattern happened, I lived kind of like a foster child. I used to live with other people during the week. My parents would pay other people to keep me, as they would say. And then I came home to live with my mother when I was around age 9. So I was kind of shuffled around to other people's households and witnessed a great many things, both good and bad. And when I came home to live, I knew a little bit more than the average 9-year-old about what was going on in the world. We will leave it there, right there, right?
Okay.
So my father loved me very much. He was my greatest hero. He was smart. I remember when I was about 6 years old, like any kid, I had a lot of questions. And I used to go back to school and go, my dad is the smartest man in the world. because he had a great vocabulary. He was a terrific teacher. He was a little funny, but he believed in helping black businesses succeed. And I could ask him any question, and he could answer it. Now, it's only now as a dad that I realized at 6 my questions weren't really that hard, right? but he had an answer that was smart, cohesive, and comprehensible, and that was a great influence on me.
What about you, Victor?
I have the kind of typical poverty kind of background with my parents, right? So my dad wasn't there, of course. He was in and out of jail. And my mom did her best to fend. She had her jail time too. So I grew up in an environment where it was eat or be eaten type of deal. And so that's kind of how we survived and how my mom did it. And so, so with my dad, I mean, he was there off and on until about 7. And I remember the day he actually left for good. And then the next day he went to jail for like 15 years or something like that, 10 or 15 years, somewhere in there. But it was a long time. And but we never had a relationship. And I'll say this, looking back at it now, I was never like angry that he wasn't there type of deal. Mm-hmm. I wasn't like angry. Even to this day, like I really don't feel, of course I don't feel an attachment to him, but I also don't feel angry at him. So that was kind of my deal. And, through some self-educating practices, I was able to get myself out. My mom did what she could or whatnot, but, my mom was, really borderline, like she was street. My mom was street. Just keep it 100 with you. She was street, right? So by any means necessary, that's how my mom moved, okay? Whether it was conning somebody, taking something, whatever it took, she was going to get it. So that was kind of my situation.
And what about you, Randy?
Well, I feel like my life's been so like peachy. Because my parents were together, but they grew up in the 50s and the 60s in New York City. And my dad came from Puerto Rico with his family. And my mom was born and raised in Chelsea on 20th and 7th with her 5 brothers and sisters. My dad came with his, at that time, 4 brothers and sisters. But he was abandoned by his parents. They went back to Puerto Rico and left him behind with his older brother Raymond and himself. And they left him a note saying, "We can't take care of you anymore. Take care of yourselves." And they went back. True story. So my parents got together. My mom had my brother at 16. I came along 10 and a half months later. But my parents were married. And there's a long story to go behind their relationship. But growing up in Queens, I was born in Brooklyn, growing up in Queens with my brother. My dad was in and out. He took care of our family with a lot of disdain as I grew up, and I found out more about that growing up. But as far as my dad, he told me he loved me a lot, and he was there. But my dad was street, and his thing was like teaching us how to survive on the street. And I took to that in a big way. And so I always laugh. We had these pre-conversations before the show started. My parents got back together after one of their many separations. We moved to D.C. and Maryland, and I really believe that saved me because I probably would have been the first one in the penal system the way I was going. I was an angry kid, violent kid, et cetera. It comes along with that, missing my dad. And slowly over the years, my dad kind of just was in and out doing his own thing, and my mom was the rock with also with disdain. Angry and young and left alone and all those things that come with like a young relationship in New York City now into the 60s, into the 70s. But, having that foundation made me who I was because you saw how you didn't want to be at a young age. That was clear. So it's funny what Tyrone was saying. When I moved to D.C. in 6th grade, I was way above everybody else. Like, what, you guys don't sneak out? Really? I know how to drive a car. Yeah, I can drive stick too. What's a stick? A stick shift. Yeah, I got it. I mean, I went to the country, and that's how I started. So I knew I had that, and I kind of suppressed it for a while because it was like, wow, I got to like stay level with these kids because I had too much in my head. And by the grace of so many things, I think my mother noticed that too, and helped me form my life as I was growing up because she was like, Randy, you have these things in you that we have to like hold for right now because you can snap at the drop. So just take your time and relax a little bit and stop going so fast. It's so clear. I was in 6th grade when that happened. But that's there's a lot of we look back on it as like that foundation I use today for my own children. And I think that's I try and find something positive in that in every day, shape or form, because I had a relationship with my father as he got older.
So let's bring that and have that conversation together. I know you just talked, Randy, about how you've even brought that back up to today, but we didn't finish that story with you two, Victor and Tyrone. How do you think your father's presence or lack thereof in your lives have affected you?
It impacted me in a great way, honestly. So now where I am now, I talk to my lady about this all the time. I find myself with so many mentors, quote unquote. But really what it is just my way of piecing together a father. And so that's kind of where it is now. And my dad is still living to this day. He hasn't been in jail for probably about 7 to 8 years now, right? But I don't call him. I don't check on him. He don't, vice versa, right? And so, and like I said, it's no anger or nothing like that, no malice between him and I, because I felt like I pieced my father together, honestly, And so now where I am today, the father that I did piece together put me in a great position.
Right.
So honestly, I'll tell you this, I really feel like I've been blessed without him, honestly. Not in some hokey pokey spiritual whatever, but honestly, I figure if he was there, the type of kid I was, if he was there, I'll be dead or jail right now. Facts, right? 100% facts. Because he wasn't there, he didn't have to teach me.
Right.
I didn't learn the street.
Right.
As much, right? Now I still had my run-ins with the street, right? I still, got my first tattoo when I was 11, in that type of neighborhood and environment, gang, right? Violence, right? But I got out. Football was my way of getting out. But I know if my dad was there, I wouldn't be here in front of you today because I'm too loyal, right? And so I would be like, oh, yeah. And even like with my mentors now, that's how I am. I'm very, very loyal with them. What they tell me, I listen. I go with it. I assess it. And so, and I take it as gold for me. So that's kind of my deal.
And I think for me, I went to church, right? And I was just that kid who always wanted to be good, right? Because my mother was really rough with the discipline physically, right? So I didn't want to get into any trouble. But when I saw my father, the thing that impressed me, it was his vocabulary, right? So I was always one. There was a show when I was growing up called Candid Camera. And they would catch people in situations, and then this guy named Alan Funt would come out and go, the reason you can't eat that ice cream right now is because you're on Candid Camera. People are like, what? I'm on Candid Camera? So I fell in love with the tape recorder because I didn't have a camera, but I knew I could start this tape recorder, have a conversation with someone, and then go, I'm recording you right now, right? So I remember one day we had just had breakfast, and I wanted to tell them, the audience, what was on breakfast. And I was like, Dad, I'm going to do this recording, and I want you to tell them what we had for breakfast and what we did today. So I said, you ready? Ready. I pushed record. And I was like, I'm here with Dad, and we had breakfast today. Dad, tell them what we had. Now, the average father would say, this morning we had bacon and eggs. And my father said, he would start off, he'd go, with respect to breakfast, we had, initially, we had eggs, which we made in the pot and we prepared in a traditional way. And then we moved on to, and I was like, just tell them, why does everything have to be so formal? But his use of language was like, I want to sound like that. I want to sound like him. Because using all these big words and using words to paint pictures, that was kind of juicy to me. Right. So I knew I wanted to sound that way, but a little less formal. So that was a huge impact. Plus, he was super, super loving and kind and gentle. And I felt like I had been so beat up by the world so early. Like I took to that love. That was another way in which he positively influenced me. Yeah.
Well, I want to continue a little bit on Victor's trail when he talked about his father might have not been there, but he pieced together a father through a mentor, through a role model, through someone who reached out. What about the rest of you gentlemen? have you had someone in your life to take that place when maybe that love from your father wasn't there at the breakfast table or for you?
Yeah, I think most kids look for that in general when there's this thing in psychology, like 7 years old is a pivotal age where it's all about the dads. And I went through it myself, and I believe that. Like, you can, like, your dad was in and out, but in my eyes, my dad can do no wrong. You know, if it was like, hey, it was a store robbery and the dad's like, that's not my dad. Yeah, but it's him on the camera. You can see that's him. No, camera must be broken. That ain't my dad. No, my dad's the best. And, you know, he could do no wrong in my eyes. But as you grow up, same thing, I piecemealed other people's families. My dearest friend, Perry Smith, that I've known since 6th grade, and he's still my best friend today. His family and his brothers are like, that's what I want. It's funny, that house, 2 cars, the dog, right?
Today we call it visualization.
Yeah, visualization.
Yes.
Right.
But then you're just looking at
right.
stuff
Then you're
and
just
going,
looking at it.
How do
How do I get that? And like, wow, you guys are having all dinner. Like, well, Friday night is family night, and that's still from a girlfriend of mine who's still my dear friend today, and with her children. And today is Friday as we're recording, and tonight is family night at my house.
All right.
I mean, I carry that long with my wife. She's like, yeah, we're doing family night on Friday night. And the kids might go to bed early, but my kids come in like, oh, it's family night, it's popcorn. I'm like, yes, it is. Let's do it. Let's saddle up. So I took all those things from other families because I knew that's what I wanted. And it's funny, when I'm listening to Victor, he's like, it's the same thing. You visualize without really knowing it what you want in your life. It's a really strange thing. I don't think many kids have it growing up, I feel, that you see this. Even Tyrone, you see for something like, why do we gravitate to that?
Correct.
Yeah.
I felt the same way. Like, it became a little bit more. I didn't know I was visualizing at the time. I just knew I wanted out of where I was.
Exactly.
Preach it.
And you didn't have any money, so it was like, just see your way out of it.
Yeah.
Like, there's something about that seemed like a good thing to do.
Right.
So when I know we're in childhood, I just want to say this so I started this visualization process around 12 or 13.
Right. Me too.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I used to just lay around and go, and one day I'm going to have, and I used to do it at night, which I still do.
Right.
I would pray, and then I would go into like, and I'm going to have this, and I'm going to have that. And then I got so hooked on it, I used to do it during the day. And my mother hated me laying on the couch because she used to say, you're so lazy, you're so lazy. So I would be actually working, visualizing during the day.
Right.
So when I got up off the couch, I needed a nap.
Yes.
I had been working. I had been working the whole time.
You're mentally working.
And in her world, it was like, that's not work. Right. Work is when you are physically moving around and somebody gives you a check. But that's a big part of why I think I have the life today is just imagining my way out.
Right.
And then as I got older, like it became, what steps could I take?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
To get
Do
there.
I need a summer job to get that thing? Like, how do I get that?
Right. And those steps that I see you talking about is what the influence of my father is that he knew it was about hard work. You know, you need something to get a job. Like I clearly remember when I moved to Maryland area, I was cleaning dog and cat cages at a pet store because my dad was like, you're 12. When I was 12, that's when it started. And unfortunately for my father, it came with such disdain because he was working on his own life when I realized later on. But I had to go get a job. And I was like, well, are you going to give me a ride? He's like, no, you got a 10-speed that I paid for. And I used to have to ride my bike pretty far to go work at a pet store. And I remember getting that first check every 2 weeks. And it was something like, it was like maybe $189. And I was like, what? This is mine? Really? And my friends couldn't believe it. You know, it's like, that was my bike. That was the new wheels I put on it. And my dad just kept pushing that with me. So that was really, for what he had to work with to teach me that was great. Because he always told me, like, follow your dreams. Don't do that. Do this. Make sure you go for it. I think I vicariously lived through my father so much because when I joined the military at 18, I signed up my junior year in high school and I never told anyone.
Wow.
Until the day I left. After high school, when I left, my brother picked me up, and my dad was just, I remember my father, and my parents weren't together. My parents separated 11 times by the time I graduated high school.
Wow.
That's 8th grade to senior year, 11 times. So it was known throughout all my friends, like, where are you moving now? Up the road. Where you going? Every year we moved until I finally did it. But when I joined, my dad was just like, he didn't know how to feel because he put this in me to get out. Because he wanted to get out, but he had a responsibility. And I think that always affected him. And I left. And I left, and I remember telling my mom, like, I'm not coming back. And I never came back to my hometown other than to visit, but had no desire. Once I got that taste of my vision board started to become reality. And that was the first step of doing that. But I think my dad was, looking back on it, he was so influential in me taking those steps because he was like, just go, man, just go, But he just didn't know how to express it so much with so much love. But he was just like, do what I can't do. Interesting. So,
I find it interesting that we all choose visualization.
Yes.
yeah. It's funny, right?
First of all, it was free.
Yes.
You could always dream.
We're daydreaming.
That was my way out,
as a kid, right?
I got out every day. I got out of the house every day. That was my way of getting out the house every day,
Right.
Like, that was my way, man. My mom come home, and she'll beat the snot out of every one of us, to an inch of life, and I'll get in that bed, and I'll go daydream. I'll get myself out.
Yeah.
That was it.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Just stay
That's
away
really
from it.
powerful.
I called it daydreaming at the time, but like you said, it's visualization.
I used to call it thinking. I'm just going to think. I'm going to think my way out.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's also this whole idea of getting out. Getting out of what? I didn't know what I wanted to get out of.
Right.
I just know what I wanted.
Right.
Yes. And it wasn't this.
There wasn't a plan how to get out.
So then at what point in each of your lives did you feel like you were out? That it was officially, you were out?
College.
College for you?
College for me.
High school, as soon as I graduated. And I wanted to go to college. I got into University of Maryland, but I knew I wasn't ready for it. I knew it. I was too scattered. I was 10 steps ahead of myself, and I needed that discipline from the military to get me more focused. And I tell people about the military, I do talk about a lot, that it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I have nothing bad ever to say about it. And I think that honed me. And the people and the mentors I met in the military, that from day one when I got to my base in Langley, Virginia, from day one I have really some lifelong friends that I don't know what it was that saw me, and they were just like, this is just a temporary roadblock for you here, but you're out. Almost the first week I was there. And I feel really fortunate about that. And you kind of get that bitter sense sometimes, too, because you wanted so much for your father to be that way. Yeah. Like my squadron commander, Captain Jones, and his wife, and she was an attorney. They were like my parents. I couldn't go out. I was in the military, and you're supposed to be a grown-up. I had to check in with them on Friday night, like, where you going? I'm like, what? I lived in the barracks. I'm like, I'm going to go out to, Hampton, Virginia. I'm going to hit you. Okay, well, get back and be safe at the base. Make sure you get back on time, watch driving and stuff like that. Or if you can't, come to the house and sleep over with us.
That's big.
And I was like,
I think what I remember is not, because believe it or not, I still don't know if I'm out.
Right.
Even with everything I've achieved, there's still that sense of like, you messed this up.
You got to go back.
Right. It's over in any minute. Right.
I mean, I'm comfortable, but I am very aware that,
Right.
So I don't remember ever being out, and I don't know that I am totally out now, but I do remember progress.
Right.
I
Okay.
do remember like, okay, I accomplished that thing. I'm on the road to something. And then something else that I wanted would actually manifest and happen. And I'm like, okay, I got two things right now. And when you are a dreamer like I am, you can't tell everybody your dreams.
No.
So one of my dreams was to be on television. Right? Because I was always theatrical. People always liked me. That was the other thing. Because people were like, that boy's got something.
Right.
And then white people were like, that Tyrone is interesting. Right. So like being likable helps. Right.
Yeah.
But I remember, you talk about sports, Victor, because you built the DV lab. Right?
Yes.
You know my story because I did.
Yes.
I was terrible at sports. I was the last guy
Really?
picked. Nobody wanted me on their team, and I was terrible.
I could have made you DB.
You could have,
I don't know, man.
Maybe
I don't know.
If I get a second life, I'm gonna look you up. So anyway, I'm terrible at sports, which by the way was a blessing because that taught me that I had to actually work for some things, right? So I'm terrible at sports, but I'm seeing this progress that I'm making, and I remember when I shot my first commercial. Nobody in the neighborhood knew. And you know this, Randy, you get your SAG card. Nobody knew because you don't tell your dreams.
Right.
And when I came on television that night, people were like, what? That guy is on television? Now, they always saw me running from one thing or another, but that's when I felt like there was major progress. Because when you grow up in a poor neighborhood and somebody gets some success, today we call it haters.
Right. Oh,
Not everybody was happy for me.
No.
And then I had to learn how to deal with that.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, hey, man, it's just one. I just accomplished one dream.
Right.
I'm still the same guy who can't catch the football.
Right.
And I'm going to tell the story right now because we're on a podcast.
All right, go for it.
There was a girl named Deneen
All right, Deneen.
who lived in the opposite building, 165.
Wow.
And I came over after I was on television to sit with her and a group of other black girls. And because I thought, I'm just trying to keep it real. And the girls are talking, yeah, such and such and such. And out of nowhere, Deneen goes, I wish he would go back to where he came from.
What? Really?
I was like, wow.
Damn.
So, I was not everybody's favorite. A kid who I grew up with, I won't name his name. But I remember one day I was walking down the street. And when you go over to black neighborhood, certain things you just know. Like people yell things out. And I remember I was on the opposite side of the street. He was on one side of the street. He's walking past me. He goes, yeah, sometimes people be thinking they better than everybody
Oh, my
else.
God. So, man.
Unfortunately, man.
All I did was accomplish like one of the things that were on my list.
Right.
And they were taught that.
But our neighborhoods that we grew up in, Queens and Staten Island, right? Because you're in your neighborhood, that's
get out.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
They're like you're making a move. They're gonna come at you, right? Oh, you're
Right.
too good for us. I'm like, no, man, I just did a commercial, right?
Right.
When I moved to New York, and I got lucky with an apartment on the Upper East Side. I have it till this day. Some people like going, Upper East Side?
Yeah.
How'd you get up there? I'm like, what? Like, yeah, how'd you get up there?
Right.
And it's just like, I don't know how to explain it. Like,
Because that was one dream
yeah.
that maybe they never dared to dream. And wait a minute, life
that's
sucks.
exactly
and you
it.
had the nerve to go get one dream of yours?
Right.
Who do you think you are?
Moved
That's
to New
it.
York, get out, changed my whole thing around, right? Changed my whole life around. It all by the time I was 22 years old.
Right.
So military's over. Actually got a job as going to be a cop, right? And even when I got to 911, I had to do 911 before going to the academy, and I was finished after it. I always, like you, I was happy with making jokes. I always wanted to be liked. Even the cops who were still really cool guys, they're like, no, you're going to New York. Mm-hmm. This is just a way station for you. Again, it happened. Like, you're out.
Right.
Save your money. We're going to pull you into a car, and we're going to watch you drive away. And some of them did. I had a friend of mine. He drove me in his car. He's like, don't come back. And I was like, he left me in my first apartment in the West Village.
That's awesome.
But that too is like going out there, and you leave that thing. People are like, really?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
So, bringing this back full circle to Dads on Dads, I know we started talking about our dads in our lives. Now that you all are so successful, where's your relationship with your fathers now?
I don't have one.
Well, I talk about it openly because I started there. My dad took his life in 2007, and it was surreal, but we spoke about it. And we were friends till the end. But with mental health that comes into play with that, there's all these reasons around it that I've self-discovered myself and worked on myself so hard to get to that spot. And I knew I wanted to talk about this today because it's important to people to know. And it's maybe uncomfortable for other people, but it's not uncomfortable for me with my therapy and my counseling that I went through about that it's okay to talk about it today. And the relationship I had with my father was like solid as ever. And all of the pain that he went through, I totally understood, and having those conversations with him. But it was a difficult time because I was in the middle of raising my son. I was going through my first divorce, and I was a single father again. And so here we are doing this, and I had all this on my shoulders to deal with, and I had to put it all aside to deal with it later. And I did in a positive way. But that was my father, and I understood it more clearly as the years went on, and I came to such clarity with it really in the last 4 years, which I'm so grateful for. So I now have a different version and feeling of my father in such a good way. But yeah, I mean, that's part of my life, and that's there's always been part of my life, and it's part of my conversations with my sons that, this is life that goes on, and we have to take care of each other and take care of yourselves, and we have that communication. So, but yeah, it was a difficult time, but I'm happy to know him.
And my father died about 8 years ago at 86. And I have nothing but gratitude. I remember there's nothing more sobering when you have to go to the funeral house and actually like make arrangements, and do you want your father shaven and unshaven and all that.
Yeah.
And for a small period of time, I felt sad but when you watch your parent deteriorate, you're like, don't stick around because of me. That's so selfish, right? Yeah. But the way my mind works is I find humor in the hardest things.
Right.
So I'm at the funeral home, and the guy who owns the funeral home has published a book called Death Be Not Ugly.
Come on.
I swear to God. And I'm sitting there, and I'm early for my appointment because I'm always early. And I'm like, well, let me look at the book. Let me look at this guy's work. And it's nothing but dead people in full color he's dressed up. And I'm sitting there going, well, that guy looks good. But I wouldn't have lit that way.
Right.
And I'll tell you why. And it wasn't. And some people go, oh, you're covering up your grief. You're not dealing.
Right.
I was so lucky to have a father.
Yes.
I was so lucky to have somebody who had a great vocabulary, who was willing to teach me and be there for me.
Right.
I don't know how he got half the money he did for the things that I needed, but he did that. I was like, this is a moment of gratitude.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So my mental note was sit up straight. You got to stay within a budget because you just can't go off of everything. But this is the last thing you will do for your father.
Right.
In this world, do it with dignity.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
that's how I proceeded. And I miss him to this day.
Right.
But I'm so grateful that I was a black boy who had a dad who was present.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Did you get an autographed copy of the book? I just really got to I hate to ask, but I need to know if you got a copy.
But I think you get it on Amazon.
What to say? Or Etsy or Amazon or something. Some of those new sites you probably find it, right? That's curious. That's amazing. That's great. That's unbelievable.
I'm so happy this is a part 2 series because we're actually out of time for part 1. Thank each of you, though, for sharing your stories of your childhood and your own fathers with such genuineness and humor. In part 2, we are going to continue to explore your own success and also your success in being fathers. So thank you again, and you guys come back and stay tuned for part 2. I'm Janora McDuffie, and this is the Urban Come Up Podcast.
The Urban Come Up Podcast is sponsored by LA Digital Recording, where you can have your podcast professionally edited and distributed to your fan base. Visit ladigitalrecording.com/podcast editing.